This episode is brought to you by Ursa Minor Outfitters. Folks, I'm absolutely in love with my loon mug. It's handmade, it's an absolute piece of art. Whether it's at the office or at the house, people keep asking to check it out. If you're not a loon fan, they also have other beautiful mugs for wildlife fans of moose, bears, and eagles. They specialize in products highlighting the outdoors and local pride through quality design by local artists. They've even started expanding into items beyond mugs, like apparel, dog accessories, and soon candles and more. They also try to partner and highlight other small businesses, and in some cases, forego profits in lieu of charitable giving to help their community, such as the dog rescue. So check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for our four-legged hiking partners, they also have a portable silicone dog bowl and also a sweet over-the-collar dog bandana. Go check them out, UrsaMinorOutfitters.com, and don't forget to enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. I'm your host, Ivan, and I'm excited to share this new season of the podcast with you. With both fall and winter arriving in the Pacific Northwest, it's time to store the mobile recording studio. This season, we'll be switching things up and interviewing some of my favorite hikers that I follow on Instagram virtually. We're following a similar format to season 1, where the first part of the episode focuses on the guest and their hiking adventures, and we're still going to end each episode with a speed round of this or that questions, all related to hiking. We have another great guest today who's been climbing some of the amazing peaks in the North Cascades. His name is Spencer. You can follow him on Instagram at Juice on the Trail. I had a great time chatting with Spencer on this episode. We learned about his hiking and backpacking adventures across the East Coast, as well as on the Colorado Trail and sections of the PCT, and we learned about his love and passion for mountaineering. Without further ado, let's jump into this episode with our guest, Spencer. Welcome, everyone, to the latest episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Got an exciting guest with us today by the name of Spencer. Really excited to hear about his backpacking and mountaineering experiences that he's had here in the Pacific Northwest and along the PCT and over on the East Coast. Thank you, Spencer, for joining us today. One of the first questions we always like to ask our guests is, how'd you get started in hiking and backpacking, and how long have you been doing those type of activities?
I guess, I've been raised camping and hiking. I was always out in the outdoors doing that kind of stuff. My mom actually was a vertical caver. So at about age 6, I was on rope, ascending and rappelling and doing all that kind of fun stuff pretty early. It took me a few years to actually get into backpacking, though. Basically, my mid-20s, I kind of started taking it a little bit more serious and kind of getting excited about it.
You've done a couple through hikes in your past. Can you kind of share with the guests maybe your first through hike that you were able to do?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess it depends on what you want to call a through hike. Some people have different meanings for that, I guess. Basically, one end of a trail to another, a point to point would be a good start for the title of a through hike. If that's the case, I tried my first one, which was our local 70-mile trail where I lived in Pennsylvania a few years ago. I tried that when I was in my mid-20s and failed miserably. We got about 25 miles in and had all kinds of problems, gear issues. My knees were crippled from lack of preparation. It was a humbling experience. And to be honest, after that, I wasn't so sure if I really liked backpacking. But, I kind of stuck at it a little bit and did a lot of just smaller trips and stuff. And my first successful through hike, I guess, would have to be the Colorado Trail in 2021. So it took me a little bit to kind of get up there.
How many days did that take you to complete the Colorado Trail?
I think it was about 30 hiking days. Now, we took a few days off because we kind of actually had some plans to meet friends out in that area. We hung out in Salida for like 4 days with some friends and, really enjoyed the break. I was eager to get back on trail, though. It's kind of hard to lose that momentum.
Most recently, a lot of your feed is you mountaineering, and that seems to be a real passion of yours lately. How did you kind of get into mountaineering, and how's things going up here in the Pacific Northwest as far as your mountaineering adventures?
You know what? I've been a couch mountaineer, or however you want to call it, someone that's really been interested in it but hadn't pursued it for a long time. Since I was around 5-6 years old, I was just always really into the idea of it. That's kind of why I started rock climbing and backpacking when I was young, but I didn't have the mountains and where I was at. So, I made do with the activities I could I could do out there. Yeah, I mean, I've been dreaming about climbing mountains for years. And long story short, I lost a best friend a few years ago, and it kind of lit a fire under me, and made me realize that it's now or never to pursue these dreams. As soon as that happened, I made plans to move out to the Northwest and start, truly training and pursuing the mountaineering dream. And yeah, ever since I came out to the Northern Cascades, it's been amazing. It's been incredible.
Yeah, some of the pictures that you've shown, it's a completely different viewpoint than I've ever seen of the North Cascades. Truly unbelievable sights that you see. And it's unique that you've been able to do those three different types of, I guess, hiking activities, whether it's just day hiking, backpacking, or mountaineering. What would you consider to be a highlight or something unique about each one of those that you enjoy that maybe the others don't bring?
I guess, yeah, they're all a little different. Hiking is pretty relaxed. You get to go spend time in nature. You don't have to carry a bunch of weight. There's no real pressure, to achieve anything too crazy. So, I guess that's a bonus for hiking. With backpacking, for me, I really enjoy the prolonged solitude, and the fact that you get to just constantly traverse new terrain. It's beautiful. You always get another day, you get to see some brand new landscape. I love that, especially with the longer trips. I mean, it's incredible the difference that you see, through a month of hiking. Mountaineering, well, I mean, it's a true physical, mental, and emotional challenge. And I love that. I'm competitive, but with myself, so that's a way to truly test myself and see what I could achieve. And I guess really from the summit, that's the best views you can get, right?
Yeah. Now, Spencer, you've put some serious miles both on the Colorado Trail, on the PCT, but you've also put in some miles over on the East Coast. Can you share a little bit about your experiences hiking in the East Coast and what makes that a little bit different from what you've experienced about hiking and backpacking here in the Pacific Northwest?
Yeah, I was all over the East Coast. I mean, I've lived there for most of my life. So once I really actually started getting into serious backpacking, hiking at about the very beginning of 2020, I was all over the place. I lived in southwestern Pennsylvania. So you got some mountains in Pennsylvania. It's nothing like out here, but they're pretty nonetheless. There's a local trail that's near me that I talked about not long ago called the Laurel Highlands Hiking Trail. I've actually hiked that 4 times. It's a 70-mile trail, 3 times just in sections. And, I did one actual through hike of it right after the Colorado Trail. I pretty much covered all of the popular loops and backpacking point to points all over Pennsylvania. I did a lot of hiking in Shenandoah and Virginia, around 100 miles down there. I've done a lot of steep miles up in the Adirondacks in New York. The White Mountains in New Hampshire, I've done almost 100 miles out there. Man, all over the place. There's a place 3 hours south of me, probably the closest, most mountainous place I could get to in West Virginia, Monongahela National Forest. I spent a lot of time down there. Some popular areas, Dolly Sods, Seneca Rocks area. Did a lot of backpacking in those areas. All over the place. Spent a lot of time in Virginia too, hiking random wilderness areas and stuff.
And for somebody like me, so I've hiked primarily on the West Coast, Southwest. For somebody like me that hasn't experienced East Coast hiking, what advice would you have for hikers that have never gone over to the East Coast that maybe they haven't considered because they don't live over there or they haven't experienced it?
I guess if you're in hiking for the views, don't really expect that. You're kind of in the forest most of the time. There's some exceptions, up in New York and New Hampshire and then the Smokies, you get some good views. But, you do a lot of forest hiking, a lot of tree tunnels, I guess, as they say. And then the trails are graded differently. You got a lot of switchbacks out here. And out there, everything just kind of goes straight up. You don't get as many switchbacks. To be honest, it's not easy. Even though the mountains aren't huge, the switchbacks make it a little nice. The trails are also very, especially Pennsylvania, very rocky and very rooty. On the AT, people call Pennsylvania Rocksylvania for a reason. It's very rough on the ankles. Lots of rain. Expect if you're going to do any kind of long time hiking out there, long-term hiking, expect to get wet all the time.
And I can imagine the humidity in the summer months must add another level of difficulty to hiking, especially in the South.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. In the summer, it can get brutally hot. And for someone like me that just tends to sweat a lot, it adds a difficulty factor to it, definitely.
And there are, I would say, some of the East Coast pictures that I've seen from other guests and from yours is you guys have some really great lookout points. You might not have like the summits that you have here here in the Cascades, but there's some really great like rock outcroppings that you can kind of hike out to and kind of get a little bit of a viewpoint. Is that something that you typically see throughout the East Coast, is little pockets of those viewpoints?
Yeah, I guess so. And like it makes getting those points exciting because you're not above tree line the whole time. So if you have a destination like that, it's worth putting the effort to getting to it because you step out into some of those, and yeah, it's just incredible. Out in all the states where I'd hike. That's usually what I was shooting for because I like a good view. So once you get to one of those spots, it's worth the effort and just to get to them.
So we kind of did a deep dive into your Instagram, and we noticed that your first post was your Colorado trail kit from 2021. I'm always curious for backpackers, how has that pack list changed over the years? How has that pack list from 2021, how does it compare to your current pack list?
Well, I guess, your kit will evolve with the terrain, the landscape, and your experience, I guess. I know when I started the Colorado Trail, I was pretty dialed in at that point. Some people start their first through hike and they've never even camped before, so they got a lot to learn at that point. But I did a good shakedown hike and had a lot of miles, before the actual through hike. So yeah, my Colorado Trail kit was pretty dialed in, but since then I've definitely gotten lighter. I could never really consider myself ultralight because I like comfort items and I like food, but I'm considerably lighter now. But yeah, I mean, really, it depends. If you're hiking in the East Coast, you need to consider the climate and stuff. And if you're hiking in a desert or high up in the mountains, you need to have a wider range of, warm clothes and all types of things. So really just changes depending on where you're going. I can't really get any lighter than I am now, though. I know that. So I accept that now.
What would you say has been your biggest weight cutting item that you've changed up?
Well, I guess clothing. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when they first start doing this, they kind of bring too much of almost everything, and clothing can be one of those things. I like to go pretty minimal with that just because you're already dirty. I mean, what's the point of trying to stay clean while you're out there just to have an extra backache? Then I guess a lot of the gear that I've bought over the years has kind of gone towards the ultralight type of gear, the stuff that's just considerably lighter than just normal items. It gets expensive though, to save a couple ounces costs money, but to start saving grams costs a lot of money. It's an endless battle and a wormhole you kind of go down trying to figure it all out.
Each year it seems like things are improving, and sometimes it's just grams, like you said, sometimes it's ounces. But if with a big pack list, I imagine, every ounce and gram can sometimes matter.
Yeah, it adds up. It's incredible. I mean, I guess food is one of the things a lot of people don't realize is probably the heaviest thing you carry, and that's something you want. Some people go out there and they starve, and I refuse to do that. So I end up carrying more weight than I usually plan by the time I'm done filling up my food bag.
And are you doing mostly like the dry freeze foods, or are you packing some stuff that you can cook?
I guess a mixture. I'm not really a big fan of the freeze dried, but after a long day, you're hungry and you'll eat it kind of no matter what. And it is light and it's packable. But, if I'm on the trail for a few weeks, I just can't do it every day. And some people are cold soaking quinoa every single night to cut their weight. And I would never do that. But yeah, I guess, on the PCT, I was bringing fresh bread and salami and cheese and jars of peanut butter and just whatever if you don't want to eat it, what's the point of bringing it? So you have to want to at least eat what you have. Even if it weighs a little bit extra, it's worth it.
Gotcha. Now, Spencer, you're a recent transplant to the Pacific Northwest, and like you already mentioned, you gravitated towards the North Cascades, but also you have been going to the Mount Baker Wilderness. What kind of drew you to those regions, and what keeps making you go back to those amazing areas here in Washington?
My dad actually has lived up in Bellingham for about 20 years now, so I've been visiting him for quite some time now. And he's been, lightly introducing me to some of these spots, and it's the whole time, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I got to live here, especially with the whole idea of mountaineering coming up, in my future. It took me a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I would spend a lot of time out in the mountains hiking and camping with him. But really, it's like, if you're truly trying to train and pursue mountaineering, this is the best spot in the lower 48. And, particularly, I guess, I'm drawn to Bellingham. I like the water. I know the area because I've been visiting here for a while. So the Mount Baker Wilderness and this section of the Northern Cascades is just gorgeous, and I figured when I moved out here I would start here, and and kind of spread out from there. And this year, yeah, I mean, I've covered this corner pretty well.
Yeah, you've seen some amazing sights. Now, one thing you mentioned that you were doing in your 20s was rock climbing. Is that something you're still involved in and do here while you're in Washington?
Yeah, I still dabble in rock climbing. Whenever I first started, I was pretty serious about it and was pushing some pretty hard things. Now that I'm a little older, I don't really care about difficulty as much. So I'm more concerned with the mountaineering aspect of climbing nowadays. But you still need to climb. You still need to kind of do the vertical thing. You need to keep the knots and the rope work and just the feeling of gravity pulling on you at all times to stay in a good mindset for climbing. So I like to climb a decent amount throughout the year. Not as much as I used to, but I've done a decent amount of climbing since I've moved here too. We need to explore more. I kind of pursued climbing mountains more than actually rock climbing, but now that I got set up here this year, we're planning some actual pretty big alpine climbs coming up. So I'm excited about those.
Have you made it over to Eastern Washington to do a little bit of rock climbing since you moved here?
Not as much as I'd like. I got my eyes on some stuff, but I haven't got over there too much climbing wise. I've done some hiking, kind of a little bit of scouting. But yeah, it's made our list. Me and a couple climbing buddies I've come to know pretty well since I've moved out here. We're working on a list, and Eastern Washington has a lot of routes on that list.
Oh, right on. Your Instagram is full of amazing views from summits all across Washington, Northern California, and Southern Oregon. As a viewer, it's nearly impossible to kind of pick my favorite summit from your feed. It's a tough question to ask, but has there been a summit that's made you work for it? And what about it was challenging?
Well, to be honest, out of the 15-ish summits I actually reached this previous year, it was the couple that I didn't that were the challenge, and which is good because, after that much success in a row, you get like a little full of yourself, and it's nice to get checked, and humbled a little bit by something. And that's what happened. I was doing really well. We just kept climbing everything. It was successful. Everything was easy. And then, we went for something a little bigger, and yeah, it shut us down. We just, and that's good because it kind of showed me that I still have a lot to learn and I could be a lot stronger. Basically out in near Washington Pass, like Easy Pass kind of area, this specific area I've kept going to, the notorious Ragged Ridge area right above Easy Pass, and a couple mountains out there, one of them mainly being Missachi Peak. That one taught me the most this year and challenged me the most. It took us a lot of time. We tried to do it a day to day. It's basically not. It kind of takes more time than that, more effort. And we got 500 feet from the summit. Those 500 feet were pretty technical and complex. And in order to actually get up and get down, it would have taken a long time. And the traverse just to get to that point was also pretty technical. And we were losing daylight. We were tired. We ran out of water. There was just a lot of things that happened that just made us turn around. So it was good that I kind of got shut down from something that I thought I was going to be able to do easily. I guess our biggest teacher, is failure. So, if you fail a little bit, you're going to learn more than succeeding every single time.
No, that's very true. And throughout this journey that you've had here in the Pacific Northwest, you've been able to do sections of the PCT while you've been over here. Can you share with the listeners some of the sections that you did and maybe what's been your favorite one so far?
Really though, I've done a little bit of PCT hiking in just a teeny bit in Central Oregon and a little bit in Washington. But this year I did I did Northern California section, which is about 625 miles, which starts at Lake Tahoe area and heads up to Ashland, Oregon. And, it was kind of shooting from the hip type of thing. I met my girlfriend down in Lake Tahoe and I actually took her out on the first 60 miles of it, which was pretty high and lots of snow. And she's never done backpacking before. So I was very impressed how she performed. I wasn't sure if I was going to continue. I really wanted to get back up into Washington to climb some mountains. But once I got going, I really enjoyed the hiking again. So, once her and I departed, I just kept going north, and at that point, I figured I'd shoot for Ashland just so I could get a good section in. And I wanted to do a little bit more in the Colorado Trail, which was 486 miles. So Ashland was, a good little extra mileage than my previous hike. It was a lovely hike. It was about 5 weeks, and I loved it, every second of it.
That's a gorgeous section of the PCT because you kind of transition from the Sierra Nevadas to the drier desert-like climate of Oregon, and before you kind of get back into the forest of Central Oregon and Washington. Were you able to kind of take in the transition from the Sierra Nevadas to high desert?
Yeah, I mean, and once again, it goes back to, one of the reasons why I love backpacking is that transition of landscapes. It was beautiful. You start in Lake Tahoe and you're at a little higher altitudes and you're doing these steep snow traverses in trekking shoes, and, you got 1,000 feet slope underneath you. And, there was times in the Tahoe area where the snow completely covered the trail for about 3 miles, and it got a little frustrating. I got a lot better at navigating since that experience. But yeah, the terrain changed a lot, and there's a lot of burn areas in Northern California. So that was a challenge in itself. I did around 100 plus miles of burn areas, and it can kind of get a little boring, and there's a lot of ash and everything's burnt, and I don't know. That was the biggest challenge of the trail was kind of getting through those burn sections. When you're in there for a week, you really take for granted the greenery. So as soon as you get back out of the burn area and you see a green bush, you appreciate it more than you ever have.
I bet. And yeah, for listeners that don't know, I didn't really know about this until I went to the Lake Tahoe area. But basically, I don't know if it's DNR or if it's a state agency. They basically like collect burn piles throughout the forest to then burn in the winter. And that's something, I've never experienced seeing.
There's a science to how they attempt to control the fires. If you don't do something, then, those dry sections are they're dangerous, and, they can combust and flame at any time. And, all the surrounding towns and stuff are threatened by that. So there's methods that I was even learning about throughout the hike, that they use to try to control and prevent a large out of control fire. Some of it is controlled burns or, kind of what you just said. It's interesting though. It really is. If you don't really go to those places and see that stuff, you don't really know that is happening out there.
No, yeah, exactly. Spencer, I feel like maybe a lot more day hikers have summit rituals, but I was wondering with backpacking and mountaineering, is there custom that you do when you reach the summit or when you make it back out, whether it's a favorite snack or meal, maybe some trail beverages or summit beverages, or maybe even just a moment of zen? Is there something that you do regularly when you make your destination or you make it back out?
Well, I mean, I guess definitely a moment of zen. At the summit, it's always relieving to get up. You still got to get down, which is half the battle. But I like to appreciate the views and just the time up there. So that's always something, I try to do. I guess with my climbing partners, I'm not necessarily excited to admit this, but our thing we started doing after every climb was about a couple miles from the car, we started talking about Taco Bell, and we made it a point to go and eat as much junk food as possible at Taco Bell whenever we got back. So that became definitely a trend with all of our after summits.
No, I imagine you guys burn a boatload of calories, and
oh yeah,
when you want something quick and fast, yeah, Taco Bell's the way to go, especially if you're coming back late.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Might be the only place open.
Exactly, and you don't, you're tired. You don't want to go home and cook a bunch of food. I mean, it's not a good excuse. Yeah, it's a lot easier to go to the Taco Bell drive-thru and just eat an incredible amount of junk food.
And is there one item that you typically get every time, or does it switch up depending on how you're feeling?
Well, it depends, because I guess their menu is always changing, even though it's like the same 10 ingredients. But this year, I was hooked on the grilled cheese beef burrito. A good 2 of those almost after every mountain climb.
Right on. And I think those are the ones where they like grill the cheese on the outside of the tortilla, right? And then they do it on the side.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. You probably had one.
No, for sure. Yeah, no shame on Taco Bell. Now, I was wondering, is there a difference between, I'm imagining there is a difference because it's 2 different activities. But when it comes to backpacking, do you have a most valuable piece of gear? And is it different from your most valuable piece of gear when it comes to your mountaineering pack list?
I guess that might change too as I kind of grow more experienced with each of them. Backpacking this year, I'd have to say the game changer was a fanny pack. The first time I used one. And yeah, I mean, it was incredible. I guess, first of all, if you're backpacking, you want to be able to filter water and snack throughout the whole day without having to take your pack off. That's important, especially if you're doing big, mile days. So yeah, with the fanny pack, I could have all kinds of food in there and all kinds of little items that I would need that I don't need to stop to like dig through my pack for. It just made it so much more pleasant. With mountaineering, I guess that changes because, I'm still kind of new to it. So I'm learning and experiencing new things. Really, this year, my favorite piece of gear would be, I guess, a shoulder strap that held kind of the same thing, more snacks, water, and a cell phone. I like to document things as I go, so it's nice to be able to pull the cell phone out, and then you can also zip it away so it doesn't, fall out whenever you're making weird maneuvers. But yeah, you gotta kind of eat. You gotta keep eating. You gotta keep that fuel going because you're burning those calories quick when you're climbing. A lot of the climbing packs, for some reason, don't have a good way to conveniently drink water, so I kind of adapted my backpacking style to it, and I have some water that's always accessible on my shoulder as well, which you can cinch, just in case you're making some weird moves because you don't want to drop that either. But yeah, those are the two most important pieces of gear in my mountaineering kit this year.
I might have to steal the fanny pack idea.
Oh, it's lovely.
So when it does come to the fanny pack, are you a traditionalist that wears it around the waist, or are you the Rambo style where you put it across your chest?
I've the waist fanny pack. The one I specifically use kind of connected to your backpack, in a weird way. Another ultralight item. I've never done the Rambo style. I don't know how well that would work, carrying a heavy pack, if that would get uncomfortable or not. I'm not sure. But yeah, the one I used definitely was a waist style fanny pack.
Yeah, I've only really seen the Rambo style is when I was living in Hawaii. A lot of the guys over there would rock it across the chest.
Nice.
On the flip side, has there been a piece of equipment, whether it's backpacking or mountaineering, that you thought was going to be a game changer, but it didn't live up to its expectations?
If I was to pick some things there, probably because of bad choice of me, picking, not thoroughly researching the item. For example, backpacking during the Colorado Trail, I bought a pair of wind pants, thinking that they were rain pants, and they were not waterproof whatsoever. So I spent that whole trip with wet legs. I just put up with it. Yeah, that was a lesson learned. So that was a piece of gear that didn't live up to my expectations, but that was my fault for not thoroughly researching it. I learned a lesson with that. And then with mountaineering, I guess I haven't really discovered anything bad yet. Everything I used so far, I've used pretty thoroughly. I have some crampons I use that are semi-automatic, and if you don't put them on right, they tend to kind of come off at times, and there's been a couple times where they've come off when I needed them, and that was kind of an issue. But once again, that's kind of my fault, so that type of gear failure was on me, I guess, at that point. So I don't really have anything that I use yet that I'm ready to just throw away. Everything's been pretty efficient so far.
I imagine, and you kind of already talked about some of the challenging summit attempts that you've done, but has there been any experiences that you've had, whether it's hiking, backpacking, or mountaineering, where you either had a unexpected wildlife encounter, maybe Mother Nature threw you a curveball, or you just had a weird run-in with an individual? Have you had any of those experiences, backpacking or mountaineering?
This year, some of the unexpected stuff that happened to me all kind of happened on Mount Baker when we were climbing it in October. Early in the morning, right whenever I started the climb, right out of the tent, we stepped onto the glacier, and one of my feet sunk into a water well, and my left crampon ended up puncturing deep into my right knee right before the climb. So I ended up climbing the whole mountain and down climbing the whole mountain with a bloody puncture wound. And then once again on Mount Baker, on the way down, one of my crampons actually broke, and I ended up down climbing the whole mountain with one crampon. So that was really tricky.
Oh my goodness. The wound that you ended up having, not too bad. Like once you got out, you were able to heal up pretty quickly, or was it something that had a little bit longer healing period?
I guess a longer healing period, because still right now I have right where it was a purple bruise mark. It finally healed, but the scar hasn't gone away, and that was in October. So it must have been deep enough to do something there. At the time, I didn't know. I thought it was just I thought I just bruised it or something like that. I had no idea. I actually punctured my knee until I got home and took off, the pants and looked at it, and I was like, oh, wow, there's an actual hole in my knee.
Dang. So you didn't really realize that you were bleeding and had the puncture until you got home.
No, you got the adrenaline kicking, I guess. I wasn't going to, unless it was really debilitating, I wasn't going to stop, and it hurt, but yeah, it wasn't enough to stop me. So I just kept going and just put up with the pain. That's part of mountaineering. To be honest, it's constant discomfort and fear. So you just deal with those kind of things.
Gotcha. Now, for those listeners that are interested in getting into mountaineering, Spencer, what advice would you be able to provide them so they have a safe, rewarding experience? And what are some common beginner mistakes that they should avoid doing?
I guess, advice, I would say, find a partner that you can trust, someone has similar skill levels and ambitions, because, when you're out there, it's, your life depends kind of on their ability to climb and pay attention to the scenarios and the hazards around you as well as yours for them. So it's very important. Also, I guess make sure you have the required skills that are in line with the objective that you're trying. If you are going to go out in a glacier, make sure you know how to get yourself out of a crevasse if you fall into one, and how to, move smoothly on a rope team. And all the things are important for that kind of stuff. I guess a big beginner mistake too is that a lot of people, I went through this a few times, summit fever. Don't let basically, you're close to the mountain and there's all kinds of signs telling you that you should turn around, just too dangerous, but you're so close, you keep going. That's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people get hurt or worse out there. So you have to control that urge, and you have to know when it's time to turn around. Even if you're 200 feet away, it's important to make those calls. And a lot of people that first start, they just don't understand the repercussions of making that mistake. And sometimes they got to learn the hard way. So that's definitely something you want to pay attention to. A big one too, kind of back to what I was just saying about how mountaineering is always a lot of discomfort and nothing, it's just very scary. Keep a positive attitude, laugh a lot, and try to have fun, because it's a big key to success and kind of staying focused out there whenever things are getting tough and stressful.
Oh, that's a great tip, Spencer. And not just for mountaineering, but for those that are hiking maybe some sketchier trails, is to make sure to have fun.
Yeah, I guess that applies to all things in life.
You got to enjoy what you're doing and make sure that you're able to have a good time. Now, you have some amazing goals. Well, actually, Spencer, I did want to ask you, is there any training or schools in the Pacific Northwest that can help people learn mountaineering if they don't have a partner or they have no experience whatsoever?
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of things to choose from. A few things that I've had personal experience with. I've taken a course with American Alpine Institute, which they're local to the Bellingham area. Great guys, great group of guides. They're very experienced. They'll teach you a lot. I took an Alpinism 1 course with them early in the year when I first came here, and it gave me, the ability to go out and climb all these glaciated peaks myself. So that was very important. There's all kinds of groups you can join. I'm also part of the Mountaineers, which is, a group that's local to Washington. You can kind of learn and go in group climbs and kind of work your way up the ranks with them. So things like that are available to everyone out here. Yeah, it's good, to try to meet a good mentor too. They'll help you kind of figure these things out quicker than doing it by yourself, and a lot safer.
I'll be sure to add the Institute on the show notes so people can check them out.
Well, I guess they advertise themselves this way, but they say they're the Harvard of mountain guides, and it's true. They're very efficient and very professional. And I really, I spend a lot of time in their gear shop. I'm always going there for climbing beta and advice on all kinds of stuff. And they love talking about it. Every climber and backpacker loves talking about climbing and backpacking. So don't ever be afraid to go ask them questions. They'll give you all kinds of good advice.
Oh, right on. Good to know. Now, we've kind of discussed before we started recording the podcast, but you have some really exciting goals coming up, not just this year, but in the future as well. What kind of hiking and mountaineering goals do you have for 2023 and beyond?
Okay, I guess a couple years coming up, I have definitely some large and ambitious goals that are going to require, mountaineering wise, basically all of my focus in every direction. So any kind of hiking that is involved, will be a byproduct of getting to and from some of these areas. So 2023, this October, I will be going out to Nepal with my dad to do a climatization trek with him for about 2 weeks. So we'll be going out there doing, I think when it's all said and done, I'll do about 200 high altitude miles out there, which is 14,000 feet to 18,000 feet. And then when him and I are done trekking, I'm going to head back out into the mountains and meet a climbing team, and I'm going to go climb my first 20,000 foot mountain near Mount Everest to see how my body does at the altitude.
How exciting! What mountain is that you'll be tackling?
It's called Island Peak. It's 20,305 feet, I believe. Kind of an extension of the Mount Everest and and Lhotse, which are two giant 8,000 meter peaks out there. It's the extension of that ridge, separated by kind of a small col. It's beautiful. It's right in the middle of just some of the biggest mountains in the world, and it's a really good test piece to start high altitude mountaineering and just see how your body does and see if you really even enjoy it.
Nice. And does that put you at like Everest Base Camp as your base camp to do Island Peak, or do you get to go by it?
Pretty close. So my trek is I have a pretty extensive trip out there. It's about a little over 2 weeks, and I'll be visiting several different areas, but I'll be at the end of that trek, we visit Everest Base Camp. And then I hike all the way back to the starting of the trek point, which is a little town of Lukla. That's when I meet my climbing team. And then I'm going with them all the way back out to Everest Base Camp. So I'll be there twice sipping an espresso at their, little Starbucks tent they have there, which is pretty fascinating. But yeah, so I'll be there twice. And the Island Peak, basically the climb, they go out there to help acclimatize. And at that point, I'll already be 2 weeks ahead of the team, acclimatizing wise. But it's just part of the process. There's no way around it. You have to kind of get your body up to speed when you're dealing at those altitudes. So once I'm there for the second time, we make our way towards the Island Peak Base Camp, which is probably about 2 to 3 days from that point worth of hiking.
Oh man, that's going to be awesome. Last question, Spencer, is your pictures that you take on your trips are amazing. Is that just your camera phone that you snap with?
That's my Google Pixel camera phone, which, it's got a really good camera. And, as I pursue this stuff more, I've always loved capturing media, so I might take it more serious. But at the moment, the phone is been good enough. It takes some pretty good pictures nowadays with the modern technology we have.
Thank you so much, Spencer, for answering those questions. We're kind of gonna go into the this or that questions, which is one of my favorite parts of the episodes. I'm going to give you 2 hiking related topics, and you kind of choose the one that you prefer out of the 2.
All right.
So the first one, Spencer, is ascending or descending?
Ascending, for sure.
Does that include mountaineering and backpacking for both?
Yeah. The older I get, my knees get weaker, and coming down is harder than you think, to be honest.
How about waterfalls or summits?
Oh, summit all day.
Switchbacks or straight up?
I guess that depends on the weight I'm carrying. Switchbacks. We'll go switchbacks.
Switchbacks? Okay. And how about trek poles or freehand?
My older years, trekking poles. Good for balance.
And do you fuel up before a hike or do you fill up after?
Before and after. Burning so many calories out there.
And how about bushwhack or go around?
Definitely go around. Bushwhack. If you ever do some bushwhacking, it's not fun.
Especially if you're wearing shorts. I've learned that the hard way.
Oh yeah, or ultralight gear, which will get destroyed.
How about, do you jump in or do you stay dry?
Stay dry. I hate to say it, I'm not a water guy. I'll put my feet in, but that's about it.
How about sunsets or sunrises?
That's a hard one. Overall, we'll say sunsets, because you don't have to wake up early to see them. But sunrises sure are incredible when you do wake up.
Does the answer change if you're on top of a peak, whether it's sunrise or sunset?
Well, there's the alpine start. So when you're climbing in the mountains and you're going for the summit, you definitely get the sunset and the sunrise, because you got to start early. So when you're, going for the summit and the sun's coming up, first of all, the warmth is really nice and the views are just immaculate as the peaks light up.
And how about spring flowers or fall colors?
If I was back home, I'd say fall colors, but out here, I got to say spring flowers.
And do you tag a hike or do you not tag a hike?
Not tag a hike.
Awesome. Thank you, Spencer, for answering those. Really appreciate it. Now, for listeners that want to follow you on social media and see some of your adventures, what are the best places they can find you and follow you at?
At the moment, really just Instagram. I do, thoroughly cover a lot of my adventures. My tag would be Juice on the Trail. I'd love for you to follow along on my journey here.
And Juice on the Trail, that's based off your trail name, right? Juice?
Yeah. I got the name. Well, I lived in Colorado a long time ago, and I got it's actually The Juice, because there's a lot of juices, but there's only one The Juice.
The Juice.
So I used to drink a lot of cranberry juice, and my roommate just started calling me The Juice. A lot of times people earn their trail name, and I like that name so much that I just told people that's what my name was, and now that's what it is.
I like that. Well, it's been really great talking to you today, Spencer, and really enjoyed hearing about your mountaineering and backpacking experiences. Is there any special shout outs that you want to do or thank yous to anybody that's listening?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'd really like to thank my mom and my dad for being, constant sources of inspiration for me since I was young up until now, and huge supporters. Also my girlfriend too, for being a big supporter and, being very understanding in my like constant focus on this pursuit of mountaineering. It takes a lot, and she's very, she's always got my back, and she's always kind of pushing me whenever I want to give up, or, when there's difficult times. She always reminds me that I can do it. So I really appreciate that. And I wanted to thank all three of them.
Yeah, family and partners are a huge support system, and I'm glad you have that with your family and your partner.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You need all the support you can get with this kind of stuff.
Yeah, thanks again, Spencer. Really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to the listeners to hear this episode. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Ivan. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this stuff. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me, and I guess cheers and happy trails.
Thank you once again to Spencer for joining us on this episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. Be sure to follow him on Instagram at Juice on the Trail to keep up with their latest adventures and his upcoming trek to Nepal. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of the Hikes and Mikes podcast. We'll be putting out new episodes every week through the fall and winter. Be sure to like and subscribe to not miss out on those. Also, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Hikes and Mikes. Catch you on the next one. This episode's music was created by Ketsa. Follow him on Instagram at Ketsa Music. This episode is brought to you by Flip Socks. Whether you're on the trail, on the job, or in the yard, Flip Socks will keep Mother Nature out of your boots with their innovative nylon sleeve. You no longer need to worry about any annoying debris getting trapped in your boots during your hikes. Simply flip down the nylon sleeve over any boot to prevent Mother Nature from finding its way inside, keeping your feet comfortable all day long. To get your first pair, visit flipsockswithaz.com and enter promo code HikesMikes10 at checkout to receive 10% off your order. And for listeners who use the promo code at checkout, I'll be donating 100% of the Season 2 promo code proceeds to Big City Mountaineers, who provide transformative experiences through connections to nature that strengthen life skills and build community for youth and disinvested communities across the nation. So if you're tired of bits and pieces of the trail finding its way into your hiking boots, pick up a pair of Flip Socks today with the promo code HikesMikes10 to get 10% off. For website and promo code, see the episode description.